The City of London is home to some of the world's most visually striking modern architecture, from the Gherkin to the Houses of Parliament, St Paul's Cathedral to Tate Modern. We asked some architecture students at UEL what inspires them to come up with ideas, what architecture means to them, and how society is affected by new builds.
So for me, basically, particularly, architecture for me is looking into different aspects, that is material and the space in itself, how to create that, but looking into details to represent, to be meaningful to the person that you design it, and also the difference between different architecture designs, so differ quite a lot between the culture side. So in UK you've got traditional architecture side, and the architectural is basically related with the space and environment and surrounding. The Shard in this case in London is an icon of the modern architecture and how that represents the City of London in this case. So basically the Shard is quite popular because it's almost making a statement where the city is and where the modernism is happening in nowadays. And I think the Shard, apart from being a modern design, also is representing how architecture is and how we're trying to develop the city, but also looking into the surrounding and how that can affect the people's life. In this case, creating more business.
In terms of London, architecture is very important because London's an old city, and it goes back to obviously Roman times and before then even. So we still have the remnants and the historic monuments that have been around since then, so we're always building on top of it. It's interesting because London is actually built on clay, so it's actually sinking. But that's also very interesting because, for example, when Crossrail, or when they've been building their tunnels across London, underneath London, they've been coming across some amazing architectural finds. So I think architecture, for me, is inherent with London because it's synonymous with its history and also those great buildings. And also we've had things like the Great Fire of London, which has necessitated totally rebuilding London, and that's led to things like St Paul's, which has become very iconic. So we do have these iconic buildings in London, such as the Tower of London. Everyone knows the Tower, you can watch films and you always see red buses on Tower Bridge. So this is part of its identity. This is part of the city's identity, I think. It's very important. And I think what's happening now is that there's a new wave of architecture that's been coming through London, especially in the city, which has been it's been very futuristic. It's looking towards the future. So what we're looking at is actually expanding the space. For example, the City of London has always been known as the Square Mile. That's because the actual business of the city has been contained within that space. So you're constantly rebuilding within that. But also, because it got so big, they had to expand to the Isle of Dogs, so you have Canary Wharf now. And being such an important part of the financial circuitry of the world, London is in the top 3 cities financially, along with New York and Tokyo. So the importance of the Square Mile, in terms of trade, etc., it quite often gets overlooked, especially with the Brexit thing going on. There's another dimension really to London. And I think London, is expanding, but it's vibrant. People are coming into it. So yeah, architecture plays a huge part in the planning of living space. A city that stays exactly the same for years. I mean, especially in a place that's so fast moving as London. Currently it does look like a building site because there's cranes everywhere, which means that whenever you walk through London, or especially driving through London is hard because of the lorries and the building traffic that's going through, and obviously the roads, etc. Because what you have to remember is that London is built on a very old road system that's really related to horses and carts and things like that. So it's different in a way from somewhere like Los Angeles, which is a grid system, and everything's built out of that, same as Manhattan. So you have the historic legacy of London as a city. And so therefore, if you're talking about rebuilding the place, it has to be in harmony with what's gone before it. And of course this is where lots of the arguments arise. But I think personally that I'm all for the idea that actually it's progressive and things move forward, and that's the way it should be, definitely. Social housing has almost become like a phrase within itself, and what it really means is housing for people. Now, it's quite a complicated issue because there's a phrase that says every Englishman's home is his castle, and what that means is, I suppose, in the contemporary sense, is that house prices have shot up through the roof. There's a very complex issue in terms of property and how much people are making out of it. They're also becoming landlords, which probably they've never been before. It means that young people who are moving into the city often spend more than half their wages simply on accommodation. So it's quite a complex issue to answer in a very short space of time. But I think in terms of social housing, it's essential. I don't think we're building enough for people. I don't think we're building enough for the next generation in terms of what we're building for, places we're building for people to live in, because the population's expanding, especially the fact that more people are being born here, but more people are migrating into London. So we should have much more of a definitive policy, I think, on how many houses we're going to build for people, and obviously there's a private sector as well. But there doesn't seem to be a good balance between the two, because unfortunately money is the issue. So for example, you can have some really nice communities, but such as Brixton and Peckham, where they're set up for the people that are actually part of that community, but unfortunately people who are investors who want to make money can move in and actually just buy whole places, blocks up, and demolish them and develop them into something that's much more geared towards their own income. So, as I say, it's a very emotive issue.
Architecture is everything. Like it's way of living. So it's not just buildings. It's about literally it's about yourself, how you live, and what you need. So there are no limitations for architecture. It's learning about everything for me. Actually, my unit, we are doing a project. The main theme of this year is future heritage, which is more on conservation projects and how to develop existing facades and how to develop existing areas. So I would say it is very important to look at these existing buildings rather than demolishing it, because there are so many dead spaces in London, like especially in Hackney or in these areas. There are so many dead spaces. So it's a necessary thing to renovate these things and make it more live, because It'll create a more safer environment.
Communities are constantly being demolished to produce new builds, resulting in communities being detrimentally affected, allowing people to lose their sense of stability in the place they once called home. The financial gain of new builds wanted to make London great is positive, but at what cost? Is it worth the sacrifice that communities and homes are broken? And is it fair to the people that make London great?